Pray. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our strength and our hope. Amen. So it's a nice, quiet Sunday evening, and Abraham's having a quiet evening at home, sitting outside under the tree. And three guys come up. And he says, "Get the hell off my land." No, he didn't say that. He welcomes them in. And there's no indication at this point that those three figures are God, at least not to Abraham. How would he know? Were they wearing name tags? He simply welcomes them in. And he says, "Hey, come on in, I'm going to give you a coffee." But then he gives them more, much more. Well, he doesn't. And it's a little bit, I have to say, I have one little objection to that clip from Beauty and the Beast, the Be Our Guest number. Where's the chef? There's no chef in that. There should at least be, I wanted the Swedish chef to come out in the middle of it. Culturally inappropriate, probably, but there's no chef. So he doesn't get it. He gets Sarah to make it. He sends a servant, or he gets a calf from the herd, and he gets a servant to prepare it. And then he brings all this food out. He's sort of the Lumiere of the moment. And they eat, and he sits with them while they eat. It's a moment. And it would be really easy to say, this is simply a moment of hospitality, because it is. It's a moment in which radical hospitality is shown, because he doesn't know who they are. And he offers them much more than simply, here's a crust of bread and a glass of water. But it's a moment, isn't it? It's just a moment. It's not how we usually tell this piece of the story either. We usually tell what comes right after this. Because what happens right after this is that Sarah overhears them telling Abraham he's going to have a son, that Sarah is going to have a child, and Sarah laughs. Right? And then there's that moment where God says Sarah laughed, and Sarah says, "No, I didn't." And Sarah laughs because Sarah's very elderly. In fact, we know that Abraham is 99 at this point in his story. He lives to 175. 175. I think it's 175. A lot longer. So he's really only middle age at 99. Wouldn't that be great? But here's the thing about this moment of hospitality. Absolutely. In fact, I know I don't have to preach hospitality to you, because the moment I said, someone comes to your door, what are you going to do? Most of the room said, give him coffee. Invite him in and give him a coffee. Now, some of us, of course, would have been alerted to the person's presence because our dogs would have gone ballistic. But you already know I'm going to say what you need to do is invite them in and care for them. Because, well, not just Jesus, but the Bible. Stories in the Bible teaches that. So, now you might be thinking, I'm going to stop now because I've made the point. But is that the point? Because this is a moment kind of in the middle of the life of Abraham. What happened before it? What happens after it? Because there's a really interesting thing about this story. First of all, I imagine one of the reasons why Abraham is lounging so leisurely and painfully probably under the trees in front of his tent is because right before this, he gets circumcised. Yes. That story happens right before this moment. So I don't think he jumped up at all. I think he got up quite carefully. He's also sitting in front of his tent. And the reason he's sitting in front of his tent is because he doesn't live in a house, because he travels all over the place. Remember, God calls Abraham to go to a new land where he will be the father of nations. And he travels around a lot. He lives in a tent. He's ready to get up and go at a moment's notice. His life is very unsettled. And in the middle of it, he gets a visit from God. There's all sorts of interesting theories about why God appears as three figures. It's very Trinitarian, for starters, but there's all sorts of theories around that. There's also, why would God need to appear even? When God spoke to Abraham earlier, he didn't need to appear as anything. And yet here's a moment where he appears. Even as Abraham experiences journey, his whole life is literally a journey of moving from place to place to place to place to place. In the midst of it, he offers hospitality to strangers who are apparently on a journey. There's two sides to this whole thing, isn't there? There's the hospitality we offer, and the hospitality we receive. Abraham's first inclination as a traveler is to offer hospitality, perhaps because he knows how valuable that can be to a traveler. Whether you are traveling by choice or being forced to, nothing helps your journey like a little bit of hospitality. Or a lot of hospitality. Because that's another key piece of the story, isn't it? It's not just a question of he offers hospitality. He offers incredible generosity, just as God does. Abraham offers that hospitality without any expectation of return, just as God does. Wherever we are in our life, we often hear these phrases that people sometimes use, particularly when we're struggling. Let it go, move on, get over it. I'm sure you've heard them at some point. You may even have offered them at some point. Please don't. It's not that they're inherently bad by themselves. Actually, I'm going to say that again because they are inherently bad by themselves. That's the point. By themselves, they are. What makes them meaningful is what you offer after. What makes them meaningful is the understanding of the context in which we find ourselves or the person finds themselves that you are offering this to. Because the thing is, we don't let things go. We don't get over them. We don't move on. We grow. And there's a huge difference. When people say things like let go or move on or get over it, what they usually mean is it's gone. It's gone. Forget about it. Ooh, that's another one. But we don't, because we can't. The experience is part of who we are now. What happens next is what determines what we do with that experience that we've had. And what we do is we grow. We don't move forward. I know we're talking about don't go back, because we think time is linear. But we aren't. We grow. Our experiences grow around us. The world grows around us. Those moments that we experience that we most want to let go, get over, move on from, are always with us. We can learn from them, for sure. We can hold them as a way of comforting ourselves. We can grow from having had that experience. We can't keep reliving it because we've lived it once. Everything is now new after that. Whether that experience that you've had is something that is grief or something that's joy, it is with us always. And our lives grow with it. You can't just forget it. Now, how does this connect to hospitality? Well, that's just it. The hospitality part is a part that comes with, what are we going to do now? Don't let it go. Let it be, and let it be part of who you are. How can I help you? How can I help you to the next step of your journey? What help do I need? There's two sides, remember? What help do I need to take the next step? Whether you are traveling, literally on a journey, I'm not a good person to ask about that. I was just thinking about this the other day because I'm a first-generation Canadian. My parents and my sisters emigrated to Canada from the UK in, I'm going to say 1952, and if my sisters are watching and I'm wrong about that, call and tell me. I think it was 1952. It was a good year. And been here ever since. My brothers and I were born here in Canada, so we're first-generation Canadians, but I've never had the experience of it. That's not entirely true. I did move to Alberta. That's like moving to a new country sometimes. But the point is, middle-class white people moving from England to Canada in the 50s is not the same as people fleeing parts of the world where their life is in danger to find a new life somewhere else. And there are millions of those stories. Millions of them. Our journeys can be quite literal. And what will we offer? What will we offer when someone new comes to our country, or our province, or our town? What will we offer? Will we go into beast mode? Or will we welcome them and invite them in, learn from them, and help them take that next step? Not to get over, but to embrace and to engage a new life. When we have friends who grieve a loss of any kind, how will we offer them the hospitality that will help them take the next step, to embrace the next step, to engage life, to grow? And if we find ourselves being the person who is traveling, being the person who is grieving, being the person who is celebrating, what will we ask for? Not expect, but ask for, in order that we might take the next step. See, I think that's the moment of this story. I really do. This story, he's 99, he lives to 175. It's literally smack in the middle of his life. It's kind of in the middle of his whole story. And his whole story, read his whole story. It's fascinating. And so much happens in it. So much that involves Abraham and Sarah having to take a step and move on into a life that includes all of that they have brought with them. And in the middle of it, we have a story of Abraham, clearly still in pain from the previous story, getting up to invite strangers in and offer them hospitality. Because he knows, I think, what it feels like to be that stranger on the road. I think we can all find